Good evening, everybody. Today is October 1st, 2018, and this is a Moscow City regular council meeting.
Guys, please join the staff, the council, and the mayor for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just forgot the words.
Thank you, Catherine.
Totally.
And the next piece of order is a proclamation on Fire Prevention Week. And this is titled Fire Prevention Week Proclamation. Whereas the City of Moscow, Idaho is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting Moscow. And whereas according to the National Fire Protection Association, U.S. fire departments respond to an average of 365,000 home fires a year. And whereas U.S. home fires result in the average of 2,500 civilian deaths a year, representing 78% of all U.S. fire deaths. And whereas newer homes are built with lightweight materials that burn faster than older home construction, and whereas many of today's products and furnishings produce toxic gases and smokes when burned, making it impossible to see and breathe within moments. And whereas these conditions contribute to a much smaller window of time for people to escape a home fire safely, with people having as little as 1 to 2 minutes to escape from the time the smoke alarm sounds. And whereas Moscow's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education, and whereas Moscow's residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas the 2018 Fire Prevention Week theme is Look, Listen, Learn, Be Aware, Fire Can Happen Anywhere, effectively serves to educate the public about the vital importance of developing a home fire safety plan with all members of the household practicing it twice a week or twice a year. Twice a week might not be bad, though. Now, therefore, I, Bill Lambert, the mayor of the city of Moscow, do hereby proclaim the week of October 7th through the 13th, 2018, as Fire Prevention Week in the city of Moscow, and I call on and encourage our citizens to participate in fire prevention activities at home, work, and school to develop a home fire safety plan with all members of the household. And I cannot stress the importance of our fire department, our volunteers. Chief Nickerson's here. Chief, would you like to just say a word about the week of fire prevention?
Mayor, after the chief's comments, could I get a picture of you giving the proclamation to him?
Yes, do we have one? I'll give him this one.
Yeah, that's
Whichever's fine. Mayor, council, yeah, fire prevention starts next week, but we've actually already started. So we were actually in the schools today. We did three ages today in one of the elementary schools. So, and we have a bunch more coming to the station for tours, pictures, and all. It's just a great opportunity to reach out to the community and the kids and get them to learn early. There's nothing like a big red, bright, shiny fire truck, and their attention span's fairly short, but yet the message gets across in a very short amount of time. So it really, if you hit them in the first few minutes and then let them have some fun, actually they grab onto it. So I just want to thank the opportunity for the mayor and the council to recognize this proclamation, and it's very important to us, of course, so I really appreciate it. So thank you. Chief,
Kids light up when they get a chance to get on top of a fire truck, crawl around on it, sit in the seat, have a firefighter's hat on or helmet on. All kids love fire trucks. So.
And adults.
and adults too.
Yeah, grown-ups do too, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, they do.
Jared brought them. They didn't fit them. I had to put it on like a third of my head. Would have fit my chin better.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
We got to run the siren too.
Thank you.
It was cool. Thank you.
You can come right
Oh, thanks.
right.
It was good.
Right on.
Thank you.
Right on.
I had a ride on Itching 26.
See, Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Gina and I. It was a Chamber of Commerce auction item.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Zach, you got the microphones up? Everybody hear that okay? Sir, move up to the front row. You might be able to hear better. If you need to, you can come up a little closer too. There's lots of room up front here. We don't discourage anybody from sitting in the front row. Okay, we got a motion by Art and a second by Catherine to approve the consent agenda as is. I'll start with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay. We will move on to item number 2, staff recognition report. Gary Reeder, you have anything for us this evening,
Work
sir?
tonight, however, I will at the next council meeting, Your Honor.
Okay. Mayor's appointments. I do have some. I have 3 appointments that I would like to present to the council. Carly Lilly, Sustainable Environment Commission, expiration of her term, 12/31 of 2020. Russ Moore, Sustainable Environment Commission, expires 12/31 of 2018. Tim Thompson, Board of Adjustment, expiration 12/31 of 2020. I would entertain a motion from our council for approval.
I just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
you said 2018 on the second,
That is correct.
so it's only for 6 months.
No, it's for,
less than that.
it's for not quite 3 months, and Russ Moore will be somebody that will be slated early on into next year to extend it, because this is a replacement of somebody that had left. And so, as we go along, it does seem kind of silly, it's only a few months.
No, necessary.
But we will, in order to ascertain the next level of time frame, that he'll have to be voted on again,
Okay.
which I have full intentions of doing.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the slate of appointments.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Gina and a second by Brandy to approve all 3 of these. I'll start to roll with Brandy.
Aye.
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 Okay. And we do have, I know we do have some of those folks here. I know Tim's here. Would you like to get up, Tim, and come over to the podium? And anybody else here that I announced? I don't see Carly here, and I do not see Russ. But please share with us, Tim, who you are, so that I know you, but let the council know who you are.
Tim Thompson, resident of Moscow now for a little over 2 years, but originally from Illinois, but a Vandal, graduated in forestry in '71, but went right into the Navy out of ROTC and spent 28 years in the Navy. Retired as a Navy captain and then was hired by the Port of Bremerton, if you're familiar with the West Sound area, for almost 15 years, and retired there as CEO and fully retired now here in Moscow. And I'm familiar with Moscow, coming and going. My in-laws lived here while we were in Whidbey Island for many years, so brought the grandkids back for Christmas all the time. So always it's a pleasure to come back and retire for the final time here in Moscow. Mayor, you have a wonderful city, and I appreciate it, and it's a privilege to have the honor to be able to serve in this capacity, and I look forward to doing my part to help you and the city go even further.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. And Tim, I've known now for a couple of years because he introduced himself to me not too long after he had moved here, him and his wife. And he has very high levels of aviation. He's very interested in our airport. He's been at every single airport board meeting that I can remember. I know you probably missed a few in the last few years, but I don't know how many. So Tim is very interested in what we're doing at the airport and airport project. And I have been on this guy for 2 years about joining one of the commissions, and finally I talked him into doing this because I think he'd do an awesome job on that. So thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor.
Please come on up.
I did make it after all, so.
Okay, Ross, good.
My name is Russ Moore, resident of Moscow for, it's been about 16 months in the last tenure. I'm a Vandal, graduated in '84, also a Cougar, so pretty close ties to the Palouse. And my wife and I are both employed here. We did an early retirement back in 2009, did some Habitat for Humanity work for a year, and my background is in engineering. My wife is in finance, and we're just really happy to be back kind of at our home. We feel like it's our home anyway. I grew up in Weiser, but when I came to school in Moscow, it felt like a much more homey place for me than Weiser did. But I'd definitely go back to Weiser and enjoy that as well. But Moscow definitely feels more like home for both of us. And definitely I'm honored to this appointment and really am looking forward to contributing in any way I can. So yeah, I have a background in sustainability, worked for stewardship in Hewlett-Packard for about 7 years, and so looking forward to kind of getting re-engaged with that and being able to apply some of those principles to the city operations and everything going on within our community. So thank you very much for the time.
And Russ, as the conversation up here, I plan on reappointing you again after the first of the year once this term is over, so we'll
Yeah.
have our hooks in you, and we love having formal vandals. Once a vandal, always a vandal. That's kind of
Exactly,
how it
yes.
is, and so I love it when people talk about the story of being here, and they've gone away in their careers, and eventually they come back here. I mean, that's a great story from both you and Tim, and that's what makes our community so unique and so awesome, is because we have great volunteers on these commissions that spend their time and their expertise. And I, as a mayor, and these counselors up here, we all very much appreciate that, because we can all learn from each other. So thank both you and Tim for standing up for us here and doing the job, the good job I know that you'll both do.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for the time and looking forward to it.
You're welcome. Okay. Now we'll move on to item number 4, which is public comment and mayor's response period. We hold a 15-minute period of time for folks to be able to come up and see, tell us what's on their minds, as long as it is not on this evening's agenda or something that is front of Board of Adjustment or Public Works and Finance. P&Z, I mean, Planning and Zoning. State your name, your address, and we'll give you 3 minutes to let us know what's on your mind.
My name is Margaret Dibble, and I am a member of the Moscow Pathways Commission. And we're talking about service to commissions here, and what a great thing it is to be on a commission. And I'd like to take this time to remember a very great commission member, Margaret Littlejohn, who was on the Tree Commission, and she was on what was initially the Paradise Path Task Force and later became the Moscow Pathways Commission. And there was a project along this path at the Blackbird Station. It's which would be kind of a beginning of a way station on the trail and on the path, and a place for people to gather and fidget and wait for their friends to show up. And in Margaret's last illness, she gave up her place on the Tree Commission, but she stayed on the Pathways Commission. And she was very interested in this Blackbird crossing. So after she died, somebody set up a fund with the Latah Trail Foundation in Margaret's memory. But we felt that, yes, it was good to have something for her on the trail, but the Pathways was very much where her heart was. And I've been nagging the city council for a couple of years now about doing something out at Blackbird Station. And there's some concrete, there's some benches, and David Schott assures me there will be a water fountain with a place for people to drink and a place to fill your water bottle, and bowls for dogs to drink out of. Margaret was very fond of her dogs. So, and there will be a plaque on that says presented by the Latah Trail Foundation in memory of Margaret Ann Littlejohn. And so I have here a check for $2,000 towards that water fountain. Ooh. And I'm very glad to be able to hand it over finally. Do you want to take it, David?
Yay.
Yay.
Well, thank you, Margaret, very much. And, things never move swiftly in government. We all know that, but we're getting there.
No, they're getting there.
We're
Much
getting
progress has been made, and I'm very, very happy to see it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Margaret.
And I'm looking forward to being able to get a drink there and fidget and wait for my friend.
Council. My name is J.D. Gilkey. I live at 400 North Adams. I've been a resident of Moscow since 2011, and I've attended some other meetings in the previous years. I'm here to talk about a few different things. I think you all have a copy of this.
Yep, we've got one.
Okay, C Street between Jefferson and Adams is nothing but potholes and gravel. And you have residential homes, you have a large apartment complex in there, and it would be nice to get that paved with all the paving that's going around town. They did fill in the holes on Adams, but they haven't done anything yet with C Street, which is really the worst street in the city of Moscow. Also, as far as repaving, I don't know if they have on the agenda along the library on First Street from Jefferson to Adams. That also is a very bad part of, needs paving or resurfacing. The other things that I would like to talk about is the elementary school on Blaine Street. I happened to be driving down there because of all the road closures, and I noticed the kids were out playing in the back of the school, but there's no fence along the street. And if some little kid would be hitting the ball and run out between the bushes, nobody's going to see him. I'm wondering why there's not a fence down that part of the road. I think somebody needs to look into that. Also, if you're coming in town from Lewiston, there's an abandoned motorhome, or not motorhome, yeah, I guess you call it a motorhome, sitting on the hillside there on Palouse River Drive. It's a disgrace. The weeds are as tall as this. The windows are broken out. There's holes been punched into the siding. It needs to be removed. It's just it's a sore sight for people coming into Moscow to see something like that and then wonder what the rest of the city is like. Also, I don't know if the city can get involved in recruiting, but we have the empty Macy's store. I think that would be a great thing for the city to try and get a Red Lobster or Olive Garden or Trader Joe's or somebody into that empty store. There's plenty of parking, and I'm sure they have plenty of business with the college and the city itself. I did get Sonic to move here and build, but I'm working on Tim Hortons now to go into the old Jack in the Box on Highway, on Pullman Road there, what do you recall? Other than that, I'm pretty happy with myself.
Well, JD, thank you for your comments, and a couple of things I'll say about streets. Is streets are an ongoing process for us year over year over year, and we're pretty well weaning down the end of the time frame now because we really
the
can't
frost
do.
coming.
Yep, and we can't really do much. Asphalt plants closed and stuff, but we will resume as soon as we possibly can when the weather will permit in 2019. And we just keep, it's like, I tell people this, and this is kind of the acronym, it's like eating an elephant. We just chew on it and a little bit at a time because we've added a lot more money into the budget for streets than we've ever had these last 3 or 4 years, and we're going to continue that process.
The paving is I mean, it's a pleasure now to drive down some of these streets. But this one happens to be going into where I live, and it's the worst street I've ever seen in Moscow.
Yeah.
And I've only lived there since July.
We'll have some conversations about that, and I appreciate the fact about the motorhome, Gary. That's something we need to look into. I'm not aware
On
of
the
that.
street issue, if the residents of that neighborhood would like to pave that street, which is how a lot of gravel streets in Moscow get paved, you can certainly contact the engineering department or contact my office, and we can set you up with a petition if we get a certain.
Oh, that was my next question.
Yes.
Would I need a petition from the residents on the street?
If you want a local improvement district to go ahead and have the street paved. Otherwise, it's in our gravel street inventory, and we'll get to it eventually, like we've been putting some chip seal type material grindings on some of the streets. It isn't paving, but it's better than having a gravel street. But some residents would like it sooner, so we have an LID process. If you'd like to contact my office, I'd be happy to set you up with
Where are you located?
upstairs on the 3rd floor.
Yeah, it's just that winter's coming and
Sure.
with all the potholes, if they can't just at least fill the potholes in.
I will talk to streets about that.
And then do a paving in the springtime, But it's, I'm surprised that the people that own the homes along that little one-block area haven't said something previously, because when I moved to Adams in July, I thought, this is the worst street I've ever been on. But they did fill in the holes on Adams, so now we just got to get the other part of the juncture there.
And I'll also inform code enforcement to take a look at the junk vehicle if if it meets the
Okay.
definition.
All right.
And the property behind Lena Whitmore School belongs to the school district. We don't put fences up along streets. If the school district determines that there is a safety issue there, then they need to put the fence up. So I would suggest that you contact either Superintendent Greg Bailey or the Moscow School Board
Schools.
to talk about that.
And one other quick comment, and I'll let you sit down, JD, that Macy's, where Macy's used to be, that department store, I know that mall is working on trying to put something in there. They're actively looking for somebody to take that space
Well,
over.
I've
So-
contacted, I'm trying to get somebody into the old Jack in the Box, because that's another eyesore right now. And
I got a
I've
comment on
contacted
that.
Tim
Bill.
Hortons, I've contacted,
Well, that's property's been bought, hasn't it, Bill? Could you comment on that? Because I thought,
The project Jack in the Box
Yeah.
building? Yes, this has been purchased by a developer. They have been seeking a tenant to do a new commercial strip building there. So they've been working with a couple different tenants. They had a few, I think, lease agreements fall through. So at this point, I don't know what stage they are in the development process, but we have seen development site plans and building elevations. So we do expect that probably to move forward next year.
another thing just popped in my mind. We lost the ice cream parlor, and now we got a smoke shop in there. I don't know how we lost the ice cream parlor, but that's a disaster zone too.
guy retired from it, so he got tired of doing the business. He was very successful.
Oh,
He
that's
just
like the
retired.
lady that had Hong Kong downtown. Best Chinese restaurant in Moscow. And she couldn't get her children to take it over, so she retired.
Yeah. Okay, JD, thank
Thanks
you
for the
very,
time.
thank you very much. Others that would like to come up and speak?
David Pierce, 716 East F Street. This is a really sad night for me, because as of today, Kathleen Burns has officially retired. It is hard to enumerate the things she has done to try to make Moscow a better place. Just think of the variety of art shows that have been held here in City Hall and sponsored by the Arts Commission, but organized and largely set up by her. Art Walk, and here in City Hall, one-person shows, watercolor shows, and so many more kinds of shows that I can't name, but they were all wonderful. It's a rare time that you don't find some kind of a show out here, and that was largely because Kathleen saw to it that they happened. And Farmers Market, look how it has grown since Kathleen arrived here 12 years ago. We now have a Farmers Market Commission. We have a farmers market on Main Street with a full-time market manager and a market which draws thousands of people every Saturday from May to October. Kathleen has been largely responsible for much of the development and innovation that has gone into the development of both these aspects of our wonderful city. But there is more. Stop to talk to her about anything related to the arts or the farmers market, and you will find a knowledge and enthusiasm that is, should I say genuine, passionate, exceptional? You have to hear it. You have to hear her to understand what I'm trying to say. Is what I've said prejudiced? Is it biased? You bet it is. But I'm convinced that Kathleen Burns has worked very hard to make Moscow a better place for the arts, all of the arts, and to make Moscow's farmers market the best in the state of Idaho. I just want the citizens of Moscow to know that I think she has done a great job for making Moscow a better place. I've worked with Kathleen since we started having a commission. I've been a vendor in the market. You can't imagine how much she has done to make that market a better place. I wish her well in all the things I'm sure she has planned to do. We will miss her enthusiasm and her passionate advocacy. So thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, David, for those kind words for Kathleen. She has been a stellar person for all those things that David said. I couldn't say it any better myself. And she's good for her and Ben, too. They're both going to retire. And I know she was very interested in chasing grandbabies and things around. So exactly, yeah. So it's pretty cool for her to be able to do that, and she will be missed. She did a wonderful job for us. Thank you again, David. Others like to come up and speak? Okay, well, we will move on, ladies and gentlemen. Item number 5, which is the Citizens Commission Report on Parks and Rec Commission. Dwight Curtis is here. Dwight, and I know Robbie is here as well. Cooper, so let's talk about Parks and Rec.
There we go. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm just here to introduce the chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission for 2018. This will be Robbie's first annual report to the council, so please be kind.
We're always kind, Dwight.
I know. So with that, I mean, it was quite a year. As you know, Parks and Rec has been extremely busy, busier than probably most years, and they've been an exceptional commission to work with. A lot of fun, but also a lot of ideas that we bounce off them, and they bounce ideas back off us, and it's kind of the perfect relationship. And so with that, I'll turn this over to, this is Robbie Cooper, and he'll give you the report.
Welcome, Robbie.
Oh, Mayor and Council, do you need my address? Do I have to do that too?
No, we know who you are. You're
all right. I'm Robbie Cooper. My wife and I moved to Moscow in 2013. Originally moving out here to work at WSU. We lived for a year in Pullman, and then when we went to buy a house, we realized we'd rather live over here. So we've been in the same house since then. Brittany, my wife, is also involved in the community. She's on the school board for the Palouse Prairie Charter School, and we're now raising our first child in Moscow, and it's a good place to do that. So I guess I'll give you the report. We'll start with members of our commission: Justin Minden, Nancy Tribble, Damon Burton. Damon's been with us forever. He just won. He won an award last year, Idaho State Citizen of the Year or something like that for Parks and Rec. Nancy is our former chair. Susan Steele, Sarah Zaski, who just joined us this year, and Ted Kisha, who's my vice chair on the commission. Myself, Susan Peterson, our other newer member this year, and Mark Heinlein. So the mission of the Parks Department, in partnership with citizens, enriches Moscow's quality of life by providing well-designed and properly maintained parks and recreation opportunities for all citizens. Services include the development and maintenance of parks and community forestry, recreational sports and facilities, aquatics, playgrounds, trails, open spaces, and city office buildings, in addition to offering a vast array of individual and group recreation programs. our commission gets reports on those programs every month in our meeting, and it's always impressive the amount of things they're able to pull off. Some things that have happened this year, August 29th, we had the dedication of the Lola Clyde Park sign, which was sort of a unique sign. It's a little bit different than others, that had this a picture of her. It's pretty cool. I don't know if you all been over there to see it, but it's a very nice signage over there. Other things that have been happening currently, at our last meeting, we talked about renaming Eastgate Park to what most people call it, which is Triangle Park.
Robbie, can I stop you for just
Yeah,
one
sure.
second?
Yeah.
I've lived in Moscow since 1977. It's always been Triangle Park. I've never known it to be any different than that, just because I used to live about 2 blocks from there. Just thought I'd share that story.
Yeah, well, apparently you're not the only one that thinks that way, because we got an adorable and impressive letter from a 9-year-old girl, a young girl who lives right over there, and the letter was asking us to consider renaming the park Triangle Park, because she said every time I tell people, oh, I live by Eastgate Park, they would say, what's that? And she said, oh, it's Triangle Park, and they say, oh, okay.
Sure.
So that came to our attention that way. Reviewed and made recommendation for parkland dedication land, a swap, changing, there was a parkland dedication piece over there where, by the Grove, that's kind of changed which piece of the property, right, was being, or they changed which piece of the property was being donated. And presently looking into and making recommendation on the name for the future edible forest park idea that will be there. We worked with staff on the Indian Hills Park grand opening, including making recommendations on the new playground that we just had the grand opening on. Worked with staff on Morgan's Orchard Park playground design, upcoming grand opening in late October. That's the one over the Pica Estates, the small park over there. Worked with staff members of the Moscow School District Buddy Club for recommendation to council on the new iSwing, which is an accessible swing that will be opening in East City Park on October 11th. This is Morgan's Orchard Park, the one that was just installed over there in Pica Estates, and which will be opening later this month. That one, we had a fun time with the naming process for that park last year, and got recommendations from citizens, and that's a historic name from an orchard that was actually in that area over there. Other things have been happening. Reviewed and made recommendation to council on the Moscow Charter School use of the HERC, continuing that. We participated once again in our annual Parks and Facilities tour, and Dwight gave us a nice tour of the city, and we saw some of the newer parks, some of the older parks, and some of the sites where we'll be developing things soon. We've been looking into this as one of our commission goals is exploring a suitable site for another community garden. There are certain things that have to align for that to happen, and particularly we've talked about maybe having it more on the south side of town so that it's more accessible to more people in town. We again hosted an information table at the farmers market this summer. Next year we're going to try to do it on a cooler part of the summer. It's apparently I think it was August 11th or something like that, and it was a scorcher. Reviewed and recommended playground equipment for Itani Park over in that development. We're currently exploring the feasibility of a Parks and Recreation Foundation to support our Parks and Recreation here in Moscow. Ongoing monitoring of the off-leash area in Mountain View Park. That was when I joined the commission in 2015. I remember that being the first big piece of discussion back then, so we continue to monitor that. And that Lola Clyde Park sign recommendation to council and the dedication of that. This is the Indian Hills Park grand opening, which just happened August 21st. Got a nice photo there. I have a couple adorable photos of my 1.5-year-old playing on the new equipment and trying to run into the street constantly. There's Eastgate Park, which it's kind of shaped like a triangle, you might notice. Some people might call it Triangle Park. And coming up, so the implementation of the 2019 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Staff just sent out a survey as part of the master plan update that the commission reviewed, made recommendations on. Annual report on the youth scholarship program with recommendations on that. Continuing the process for the playground equipment and grand opening of Atani Park and Lola Clyde Park. Working with the tree commission and the public to develop a plan for that edible forests park. Working with staff in the Sustainable Environment Commission. We've been having sort of like joint discussion, visiting each other's meetings on reviewing pesticide use in the city, parks and playgrounds. And completing Blackbird Station, which was mentioned earlier, with a grand opening in November. I think that's it, yeah.
Well, parks are on the move.
Yeah.
Robbie, and that's an important part for every one of us, and so that's exciting. Well, what's happening with parks?
Mm-hmm.
Comments for Robbie?
Yes.
Gina?
I do. I have to say, there were a couple items that stuck out very largely to me, and it involves kind of this cross-pollination between commissions.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that sort of cooperation is happening now, where we recognize the expertise within commissions and how banding together is really a good thing. I have not gone to a tree commission meeting this year without Mark Heinlein sitting right behind me, listening and sharing concepts and stuff. It's really just very, very awesome, and I commend you guys for that very, very much.
Yeah, it's been very intentional. It's been one of our commission goals for a couple of years to make sure that we're aware of what other commissions are doing and getting involved with them, as it makes sense.
Well, it's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on my part, I'm the council liaison with the Parks and Rec Commission, and I know you guys have been boogieing it pretty fast and making some really good use of the Hamilton Fund monies to bring a lot of these underused and undeveloped parklands into use by the citizens, which is why they exist. And so the progress that's been made there is quite fantastic, and especially Morgan's Orchard, which has sprung from mud to park in some kind of record time for a park in this town. And I've also been very pleased with, as Gina pointed out, the cross-pollination between commissions, especially with the Sustainable Environment Commission, and the potential reduction in pesticides for the parks, with a very structured and good approach to managing one park with as minimal pesticide use as possible over at Otness Park. And I'll be very interested to see how that turns out. But excellent experiment, good ways to think, talk amongst the other commissions, and make progress for the good of all. It's really been a nice experience working with the Parks and Rec people.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Yeah, I think even in the the few years I've been on the commission, it seems like things are just moving faster and faster and more, and I think it's a good sign for your citizens to demand parks. I think you have a good community when people are interested in getting outside and getting into the parks, and the city's doing a wonderful job of meeting that demand.
I might just comment too. I know that citizen survey that Parks and Rec has going right now is out there. What is the time frame for people to respond to that survey? Do you know?
21st of October.
Okay. Yeah, it's 21st of October is the closing. Yeah, my wife told me yesterday, the day before, she said, I just got this survey from the park. I was like, yeah, I know.
Fill it out. Fill it out and send it back in. Okay, well, thank you very much, Robbie. Good report. Thank you for your work on the commission as well. We appreciate that. Okay, we are going to move on to item number six, which is the public hearing, amended and restated Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal District redevelopment plan and consideration for it. And Bill Belknap will present that for us this evening. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Your Honor. Councilors.
Good evening, Bill.
So just to provide a little bit of background on this subject, when the City Council worked to develop the 2015 strategic plan for the city, the council identified the deteriorating public infrastructure within downtown as a major challenge area for the city. We held, later in that year and in 2016, we conducted a number of joint meetings between the City Council and the Moscow Urban Renewal Agency, at which point in time the discussion focused around the expansion or the consideration of the expansion of Legacy Crossing to include Main Street was identified as a priority for the agency. Amending the boundary would allow the opportunity for the agency to partner with the city to address the condition of the downtown streetscape and public infrastructure improvements and potentially seek grant funding to help assist with that work. But that urban renewal district process requires a number of sequential steps as outlined in Idaho code. In that process, the first step is to complete an eligibility study of the area, which identifies whether the area includes 9 different criteria or any of those 9 different criteria that could determine the area to be in a deteriorated or deteriorating condition. That agency completed that study earlier this year and transmitted it to the City Council for the Council's consideration on March 1st. The Council considered that eligibility study and concurred, and that approved the eligibility study and authorized the agency to move forward with developing the district plan, and that occurred and was approved on April 2nd of this year. The next step is for the agency to develop that amended district plan and approve that for transmittal to the City Council for consideration. That was done by a resolution, and that was approved by the agency board on June 7th. The plan is then referred to the city's Planning and Zoning Commission to review the plan for conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. And that was reviewed by the commission on July 11th of this year, and then they approved their written decision finding that the proposed plan was in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan on July 25th. The final step of the process is for the council to review, consider the plan, conduct a public hearing, which must be done by resolution, and that is what we're here this evening to do. The plan document is really intended to outline the overall project goals, objectives of the urban renewal project. It includes documentation of compliance with all the required actions as I outlined previously. It identifies the activities, the improvements, partnerships, the public and private participation that the agency intends to undertake within the district, and it reviews the proposed plan and the anticipated financial tax income revenue to be received to determine that the plan will be financially feasible to complete the proposed activities. There is some discussion related to any proposed relocation of persons or business concerns, which you don't anticipate in this plan, and it also is required to identify any properties that may be required by the agency in conjunction with the work proposed. Idaho Code 502033, and we are looking at amendments of the existing Legacy Crossing Plan that was adopted in 2008. Idaho Code 502033 does allow for a one-time expansion of an existing district boundary by no more than 10% of the existing boundary area. The proposed amendment would move the eastern boundary approximately 200 feet to the east, so that boundary currently runs down the alley just to the west of Main Street and does not include Main. So the proposed amendment this evening would move that boundary from A Street on the north down to 8th Street to the south, approximately 200 feet to the east, to the easterly right-of-way line of Main Street. The annexed area includes 12.2 acres, which would equate to about 7.5% of the existing 163-acre district, so it was well below that 10% expansion limit. Idaho Code also includes a limitation that no more than 10% of the city's total assessed valuation may be within any urban rural districts at any given time, including the valuation of the proposed annexed area. Only 5% of the city's total assessed valuation would be within an urban rural district if this proposed amendment is approved this evening. Also, this is just a map that shows the area proposed to be annexed. This is here A Street on the north, and that boundary currently runs down the easterly alley line located west of Main. It did, at the time of 2008, jog around the Moscow Hotel that it extends into that alley area and continued down south to 8th Street, jogged over to the easterly right-of-way line of Main, and then continue on south out the Troy Highway. So the area shaded in red is the area that's proposed to be included in the district. That includes that 12.2 acres. It includes that triangle of property that the city owns that was a leftover remnant from the North Couplet construction just north of the CJ's property. And it also includes small extensions on each of the side streets to allow for the full sidewalk curb extension to be constructed, and also includes a portion of 4th Street to the alley alignment where the curtain fountain is located in Friendship Square. One of the elements that you have to undertake in doing the plan is to do an assessment of the infrastructure needs within the district to identify what improvements are required. That list of improvements was updated to reflect the current conditions that have changed since 2008, as well as to add in the areas needed to be addressed within the annexed area. Where the projects were organized into 4 different public investment categories that align with the agency's recently adopted strategic plan, including community infrastructure, which is largely public streets, public utilities, water, sewer, and stormwater utilities. Streetscape enhancements that are sidewalk improvements, street furnishings, lightings, street trees, brick accents, and other elements. Community placemaking that typically involves landscape improvements, community plazas, parks, and open space areas. And then special project category tends to pick up any property acquisition, environmental remediation, structure demolition, or any other activities of that nature. So within the document this evening, there is a table, which you obviously cannot read on the screen, but I'll kind of run through a few of the projects that were identified. Within the community infrastructure for street projects, there's the extension of Asbury Street through the center of the Legacy Crossing area, Almond Street reconstruction resurfacing, the 3rd Llewellyn State Highway 8 intersection reconstruction, Llewellyn Street improvements, 1st Street, 5th Street, Henley Street, and it's a general overall pavement improvement program. With water systems, there's a railroad corridor trunk line project, as well as new fire hydrant installations and replacements throughout the district where they are old or deficient. Replacement of an existing main on A Street that is substandard, as well as one on Railroad Street. For sanitary sewer projects, there are a number of manhole replacements, and the city has a high number of clay sewer mains that are beyond their age of service within the district. So there's a large amount of clay main replacement within the district as well. Looking at storm sewer projects, there is also a large storm sewer main improvement project proposed on 6th Street. That area located from downtown heading west towards the creek is substandard in size, as well as very flat in elevation that cause flooding and backups in the downtown area. For streetscape enhancements, the Main Street streetscape project and the intersection improvements are the largest projects, and there's also general streetscape improvements throughout the district. And there are a number of public landscaping, park, plaza development enhancements, public art installations also included in the placemaking category. And special projects include public parking development, pedestrian bicycle improvements, and other engineering studies that may be necessary to advance the project. So again, this slide shows the streets that were identified for projects. These are those roadways within the city that are either in poor or very poor condition that are in need of improvement. The water system included the main down the middle of the railroad corridor, as well as the Jackson Street and the Railroad Street improvements. For sanitary sewer, it was a main interceptor located down the core Legacy Crossing, as well as a aged and failing main located in the alley between Lilly and Llewellyn. And then we also have the general clay main replacements throughout the district. For storm sewer, there's that main from downtown heading east on 6th Street. And then there are 2 additional street storm lines going up Asbury and Almond Street that are need replacement as well. And the focus of the streetscape work was identified on the Main Street corridor. The financial feasibility study is a general review of the anticipated district revenue generation to fund the identified improvements. It is intended to demonstrate the overall feasibility of the project plan, but not necessarily dictate the timing or exact methods that things would be funded. The plan would need to be flexible, adaptable to changing conditions, and it may need to address private development activity as may occur within the district. And the method of financing may vary. The agency does use a number of different funding mechanisms, whether that's a development participation agreement, whether that's direct funding of a project, or utilizing some other debt instrument. And those will all be determined based on the timing of that specific project and other activities that are happening at that time. That feasibility assessment does require a reliance on a number of assumptions. The first of which is the base valuations would grow at a modest 1% annually, and that's compared to the city's overall assessed valuation growth of about 1.85% over the last 10 years, much of which has been during the Great Recession. For the 2019 to 2021 fiscal years, the new development increment estimates are based on projects either currently under construction or in the planning stages, and so those are fairly well known. Beyond 2021, future new development increment growth is estimated at about a 9% annual growth. Again, since the formation of the district, new development has grown by over 28% annually within the district, even after accounting for that base valuation growth. So we do think these assumptions are conservative. The other is that levy rates will be consistent during the duration of the project. We do anticipate those to remain relatively level. Any facility bond measure levies are not included in increment generation for the agency. Those current levy rates then are about 1.79% within the district when you include the school district, the city, Latah County, highway district, cemetery district, and the library district. Within that financial feasibility study, there are a number of tables that identify the tax years, the base growth, new development increment growth, total tax increment revenue, and that cumulative number over the life of the district that's projected out to 2032. We do look at our investments in the categories of the community infrastructure, streetscape, community placemaking, and special projects. And you can see over the planning horizon, we're looking at about $12.1 million in total public investment improvement needs that have been identified within the district. The financial feasibility study does conclude that it's expected that the district, as amended, would generate sufficient revenue to fund the identified infrastructure needs. The action as amended, the section that I mentioned is required is for properties to be acquired by the agency. While no particular properties have been identified for acquisition, we do not intend to purchase property for future development by private persons. We do reserve the right to acquire additional right-of-way necessary for public facilities or other improvements that may be required in association with the projects that have been identified. As I mentioned, the approval process on June 7th, 2018, the board approved the transmittal of the proposed amended and restated Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal Development Redevelopment Plan to the City Council. On July 11th, the Moscow City Planning Zoning Commission did review it for conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. And they did determine that was, and there is a written statement in your packet today confirming that. And this matter was also reviewed by the Administrative Committee just last week at September 24th meeting. So the final step in the process is a public hearing this evening that we're here to do. So staff's recommendation is to conduct the public hearing and upon consideration of any testimony presented to approve the amended and restated Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal Redevelopment Plan and the associated ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings that will be read by title and published by summary. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer your questions you might have.
Questions for Bill before we open the public hearing?
I have a question.
Catherine?
So I'm looking at the map that you pulled up that had the red outline, and I know that you talked about 4th Street because that's where the fountain was?
Yes.
So that's on the west side of the street, and then on the east, on the east side of the street, that's where the fountain is. On the west side of the street, when it kind of goes around that building, is that because that's the...
So let me just bring that up, might be a little bit easier to see for the audience here. So this location here, so the current boundary comes down and jogs around the Moscow Hotel and then continues on down south on the east side of the alley. So that would annex in that portion of the Moscow Hotel, actually the full hotel, and then also that portion of 4th Street that's on the east side of Main Street that includes the fountain.
So my question, thanks for bringing that map back up. My question has to do with the property that is being asked to be developed again, where Jimmy John's is across from the way.
Okay, so down at the 6th and Jackson property?
Yeah. So from my understanding and trying to put this together, somehow this kind of dovetails into that? They're not the same thing, but the idea is this kind of opens up, introduces a renovated look to that district too? Area that we're asking for people to renovate, where the silos are?
So I think the overall goal is to ensure that we can, address the deteriorating infrastructure on Main Street in the same manner that we have done with other frontage improvements that have happened throughout the district. So, for example, at the 6th and Jackson property, the 6th Street frontage was improved with the decorative light fixtures, the tree wells, the brick accents. So the primary goal is for us to be able to apply the same treatments to Main Street, given its deteriorating condition, and to help build a more unified theme of the public infrastructure, streetscape, and the community throughout that area. So this should help kind of dovetail in those design elements into the downtown core, if that's what you're interested in.
And I know because it's not part of this drawing and it's a separate thing, but it's that same idea that you're pulling into this.
Correct.
In hopes that it will be able to look like that.
We would anticipate streetscape improvements would be very, very similar in the downtown core, as has been done in various locations within Legacy today.
Okay. Yeah.
And that infrastructure was first put in the 80s, so it's well dated, 35, 36 years. All those bulb-out curbs and different things, so. Other questions for Bill? Thank you, Bill. I will go ahead and officially open up the public hearing at 7:54 for anybody that'd like to come up and speak. Please come on up, state your name and address, and let us know what your thoughts are.
Victoria Seaver, 121 North Lily, Moscow. So I've been attending for 4 or 5 years all the URA meetings, so it seems like I should say something. And I've seen this proposal in detail there, and the plan is meticulously thorough and thoroughly supported. So the Moscow URA is a model of high-caliber procedures and investments of what is achievable when URAs are done right, and this one is. So it's a no-brainer to expand the Legacy Crossing District in order for the district and the city to collaborate on upcoming repairs and upgrades for Main Street and the immediately adjacent areas. These are needed for safety and to promote downtown investments. With URA's contributions, we will leverage resources, aesthetics, and community identity, and extend consistent design elements throughout the district, and align physical linkages with Moscow partners like UI and Griffin. Do it.
Thank you, Victoria. Others like to come up and testify? Seeing nobody else, I will close the public hearing at 7:56 and turn it over for deliberation with council. Brandy, did you have your hand up?
Well, I would say one thing that has come up in some of the URA meetings is, back when the boundaries of this district were established, there was some discussion about it, including this portion that we're considering today. And I think under different leadership and some misunderstandings at that time, it was not included. However, through discussion, I think there was some agreement that it really should have been. So we're trying to take this opportunity to correct that and really include these expanded boundaries, which is the way it should have ideally been from the start, to really support how the URA can help the city and benefit the community at large with these infrastructure improvements that, as we can see, are quite spendy to really keep up with what we need to happen downtown.
Art, did you have something else?
Oh, I was just going to say that I was going to echo Victoria's comments and say I hardly agree. She's been to as many of these meetings, both URA and city council, as I have. And really, as she puts it, it's a no-brainer. We should go ahead and do this and incorporate this as part of the Legacy Crossing. It makes plenty of sense.
Your Honor, I move, yay, that we approve the ordinance under suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary.
Second. Jim beat me.
Jim beat you. I have a motion by Gina and a second by Jim to approve the ordinance under the suspension of the rules requiring 3 complete and separate readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary. Any other discussion? I will start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for all that work.
Aye.
Finally.
Aye.
Okay, it has been approved, and now we have ordinance number 2018-13. Okay, ordinance 2018-13, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Moscow, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, approving the amended and restated Legacy Crossing Urban Renewal District Plan, which includes revenue allocation financing provisions, providing for a one-time expansion of the existing project and revenue allocation area of less than 10% of the existing project, and revenue allocation area is authorized under Idaho Code Section 50-2033, authorizing the city clerk to transmit a copy of this ordinance and other required information to county and state officials, approving the publication of a summary of the ordinance with the full text available at City Hall providing for a waiver of the reading rules, providing that this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage, approval, and publication within an effective retroactive date of January 1, 2018, and providing that the provisions of this ordinance be deemed severable. Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 7, which is a lot division on 401 East Beach, and we have Leah Carlson here with us this evening. Good evening, Leah.
Good evening, councilors and mayor. Okay, so tonight we have for your review a proposed lot division located at 401 East Veach Street. And the site is located just north of Troy Highway and just south of Veach Street. And it is within the motor business zoning district where there is no minimum lot size or minimum lot width. The current lot is 20,985 square feet, and the proposal is to split it up into 4 different parcels. Parcel A being 4,082 square feet, parcel B 4,985 square feet, parcel C 6,684 square feet, and parcel D 5,235 square feet. And here's the site plan of the area, and you can see the existing building up here in the northwest corner, as well as a 20-foot wide access and utility easement cutting down from the north to the south. And from the west into the center, this will provide for centralized parking that will be shared by all 4 lots. And I did include for context this development site plan that shows the existing building here as well as the 3 proposed developments and the shared parking of the center. There's 26 parking spaces that are proposed in here, including 2 ADA parking spaces. So the lot division proposal was reviewed by Public Works Finance Committee on September 24th, and staff recommends approval of the proposed lot division with no conditions. And with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Catherine.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Again, we had quite a few citizens express their concerns with parking and the neighborhood having children and access of how people will be using the property. I was just curious if anyone, if they thought they might contact you further. Did they ask more questions? What did they say?
We did receive one email from the gentleman that spoke at the very end. I believe his name was Jerry, and he just expressed his concern about traffic. Here, I'll go back to this slide, because there's an alley down here to the south, and he was expressing his concern about traffic flow through this alleyway. And then I'll go back to this here, and then how it would be difficult for traffic to get out here onto Troy Road. And he also was concerned about parking. However, yeah, that was his general comment, but yeah, he didn't see this development plan either. So.
Leah, wasn't the idea, if I remember right, there was parking with inside that section as well? Wasn't there parking inside there? Yeah, and those
there's
4
supposedly
squares,
19 parking spaces
isn't there?
off-street parking.
Yes.
Off-street that are not on the street at all, because there was a
Yes.
concern about too much parking off-street, but there was
Correct.
suffice for what was.
Yes. Yeah, these are all off-street parking spaces.
Relative to the division itself, and this might be something for you, Scott, why the odd configuration of parcel C, where it looks like everything would work better if you just had them all as blocks and then the 2 easements coming through, as opposed to C owning all the way up to the top?
I actually have a slide for this in hopes that you would ask this. Well, I'll just go over this quickly. So
How anticipatory.
So every lot, this is in city code, every lot shall abut public street right-of-way for a minimum distance of 40 feet. And because parcel C down here is abutting the alleyway, it's not a public right-of-way or public street. And so to make it into a flag lot, that did work because flag lots must have a minimum of 20-foot right-of-way onto a public street. So this was the configuration that made sense and fit city code.
That makes sense now that you explain it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Leah? Okay, well, The council like to?
Yeah, I move to approve the lot division request with no conditions.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Catherine and a second by Gina to approve the lot division request with no conditions. I'll start to roll with Brandy.
Aye.
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 Aye?
Aye.
Okay, that is considered done. Now we'll move on to item number 8. The request for the statement of support for Proposition 2, which I absolutely support. So with that, Gary, I'll turn it over to you.
If that had cost some money for the city of you saying that, that would have been prohibited.
Well, my own personal opinions.
As you have in your packets, on September 12th, the letter dated September 12th, Ken Fonts, the chair of the Moscow Human Rights Commission, sent a letter to Mayor Lambert requesting that he issue a letter, or when I discussed it with Mr. Fonts, we had discussed whether the council would be interested in adopting a resolution support of Proposition 2, which will provide Medicaid expansion in the state of Idaho, which is a ballot measure this November. With that, we began working on it, determining whether or not that was something that we could do. We engaged the city attorney to determine what her opinion was. And it turns out that it is actually may run afoul, likely runs afoul of Title 74 of the Idaho Code, the Transparent and Ethical Government Act, which prohibits a public entity, city, government, county, state, from expending public funds in the support of a ballot measure. So in reviewing that statute, ballot measure includes constitutional amendments, bond measures, levy measures. Public funds are prohibited to support or to not support those measures. And there is a section of exclusions that says that you as individuals can certainly exercise your right to support or not support ballot measures, but to expend public funds on that is prohibited. We recently discussed whether or not Mayor Lambert had offered to help support public education by the support of the Moscow School District's bond measure, override measure this fall. And further, we looked into that. Again, that's something that's prohibited. Even though it's the right thing to do, everybody supports it. It's not something that we can expend public funds on. As we move forward with the bond election next spring, again, we may educate, we may do everything but advocate. We can advocate people to vote. We can't advocate for them to vote a certain way. So when we move forward with that bond measure, you'll see that there are some things where you want to go out, rah, vote for this, it's the right thing to do. We won't be doing that. What we'll be doing is educating. There may be an advocacy group, a private advocacy group that does that, but unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say unfortunately, Idaho law prohibits us from participating in that as a governmental entity. So with that, it's the advice of the city attorney's office and administration that the council does not officially adopt a resolution in support of Proposition 2, so that we're sure that we don't run afoul of the Transparency in Government and Ethical Government Act, and that you feel free, and if the mayor chooses to send a letter, or you individually choose to send a letter in support, you may certainly do so, but not use city resources. That being said, in reviewing the Moscow City Code empowering the Moscow Human Rights Commission, it is part of their charge to take positions and advocate for equal rights among folks, providing opportunities, that sort of thing. So after consultation again with the city attorney, we believe that in keeping with their mission, they would be okay with sending a letter. However, the council would not. So
it's okay for us to say that we hope that the state of Idaho does get up to speed with other entities around, so we are in a similar playing field. Is that
doesn't cost
is that
anything
accurate?
to have a
Doesn't
verbal
cost
opinion
anything.
on the record.
I'm not going to get fined for saying that, am I? For Christ's sakes, we're trying to help educate all.
I
you
do.
know.
I have a question though.
Okay.
So in the opportunity that we would have as citizens to support this or not, can we use our titles?
Yes, you may. I've seen it in other places where, council members individually may go together on a ad in the paper and list out that Gina Teruscio, Moscow City Council member, and then we would appreciate as staff if it said there were no public funds expended in taking out this ad. But you are certainly free to exercise your First Amendment right to free speech.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bill, I have one
Brandy.
question too for Gary. Can a counselor sign the Human Rights Commission's letter?
I don't think there'd be a prohibition of doing that. That would be highly extraordinary. Typically, council members don't sign commission letters. Commission letters typically come through administration. We vet them, help them compose those letters if necessary, provide them to the mayor, and then the mayor determines whether or not they support the city's official position and send out. So again, it would be our comfortable opinion if you would make your personal opinions known, because the Human Rights Commission at least has an arguable that this is part of their job, that they can do it, but we would really like to keep the council separate from that.
Right on.
Okay, well, is there any, this is kind of a gray area, Gary, is there any reason why each one of us as individuals couldn't suggest that, hey, this would be a very smart thing to do? I mean, do we have, I mean, I know it's a gray area, but
Well, as a
we're not.
citizen, I collected signatures to get them validated by the state to get it on the ballot. So I think the individual actions that we've done that you can do, and I think writing a letter as an individual is really, and I think you can cite the commission's work that the city does that you support. But I don't think we can collectively, which is absurd.
Well, okay, Jim, did you?
I'm the liaison to the Human Rights Commission, and there was some discussion about this at the last meeting, and that's why it was forwarded to you. I don't see any reason why the commission's letter would have any less weight than this body if they sent that in, and if we as individuals all send one, it just magnifies that. And we certainly have our First Amendment rights to do so. So I think
Yeah, you
that's
could certainly even put in your private letter that you support the position of the Moscow Human Rights
Exactly.
Commission. And dare I say, the Latah County Commission. You can't talk to Commissioner McGraw or Commissioner Lamar without hearing about Proposition 2. So,
Okay, well, there you have it.
That's about where we have to
Yeah.
leave it, I think.
Since we all took these
Thank you.
oaths to follow all the state laws, I suppose we just can't do
Thank
this
you,
one.
Gary.
so.
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, ends our agenda, but we'll go into reports. I'll start with you, Catherine.
Oh, okay, I would like to report, and it made the paper, about the Palouse Bike Week, and they did a nice job of interviewing Kelly Cooper, and Aaron Bacon, who did a lot to coordinate and make people aware of biking opportunities in our community. And so even though the weather was a little gray, it was really actually very nice. And Tyler Palmer's the one that had the idea to close second to third and have that idea to come to be. So I think it'll grow over time. So that was really neat. And I do appreciate your letter for Kathleen Burns. Just being on the commission for just a short time as liaison, I've really gotten to appreciate not only your dedication, but just everything that you said, that she does such a great job of educating and enlightening and bringing forward all types of art in our community. So thanks for writing that. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Art?
Yeah, I don't have anything. Parks and Rec got canceled for lack of things to do this time, so they'll be back at it. Other stuff coming right up, though.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a brief meeting for SMART this month, not a lot to report. Planning and zoning, however, they have scheduled their comprehensive plan open house for the 24th. So we'll be having more information soon about that. And then just talking about the subdivision code in the last meeting. And Fair and Affordable Housing Commission will meet this Thursday.
Okay. Gina?
I have no reports for you this week. I will admit, though, that I will find out Kathleen's phone number and call her regularly to get my dose of Kathleen craziness.
Good enough, Jim.
Well, we just talked about the Human Rights Commission. That was the crux of that meeting this last week. Police Basin Aquifer Committee, the Water Summit is coming up on the 18th of this month at Schweitzer. So if anybody wants to attend that, that's certainly open to everyone, and encourage anybody to go to that. That's all I have.
Randy?
So a couple of the commissions that I'm liaison for had their big events, which were well attended. The Pathways had their bike tour, and Catherine was there, and the county prosecutor was there, and Aaron Bake, and people from all, kids, adults. It was a great turnout, and people were very interested in the updates to the underpass, and they thought that was really cool. It's coming along, and the Blackbird Station as well. So people are excited about all that, and the possibility of maybe an underpass at 95 at some point. The Orchids Awards was also very well attended, and Catherine was also there representing the mayor, who was unable to attend. And that was a great event, and the food and drinks and everything went over very well. Wonderful slideshow that Nels Reese put on. And the SEC met. Probably what I was most enthusiastic about there was Kelly Cooper gave her report and showed what she had been working on to go out with the recycling changes to the single stream, which is a document addressing how to reduce your waste, and it's really great. So had a lot of different ideas and options on how, as consumers, you can make different choices and reuse, and just to try to reduce your waste overall. So that will be going out with the educational materials about the actual changes in the single stream recycling. There was also a U of I student there named Chase, who is working, she's applying for a U of I mini grant that can be awarded from $1,500 to $3,000 to establish a parcel within U of I for a pesticide-free spot. So Steve McGeehan, who's the chair of SEC, is going to be her mentor with that, and hopefully she'll get that grant, and then she can report back to SEC of how that project went with their test plot too. So that was kind of cool, that getting more student involvement there with SEC. And the other thing I want to mention was the Region 2 Legislative Forum, and Gina was there as well, and we got all kinds of exciting updates about the things that might be happening in the state legislature coming up. And Bill Belknap gave a great presentation on the URA as well.
You both did. You did a good job too.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting.
that's it.
Okay. First off, I want to thank Catherine for filling in for me for Orchids Awards. It was very nice that you did that. And that's a fun event to go to, because there's a lot of information and different things. So I was sorry that I couldn't attend, and I missed that. On September 24th, we had our first MIAC, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council meeting. We had 6 young men and 5 young women. To start this off, we got our 12th member coming on, so this is really exciting. We had 4 students from Logos and 7, soon to be 8, from Moscow High here. And it's going to be a fun thing having these super energetic kids. And I told them, I said, please forgive me. I'm going to treat you like an adult. I will call you kids, because after all, I've got grandchildren almost your age. And so anyway, these kids it's amazing. I'm so excited to see what we can do. You know, when I mean we, what they can do. Brandon Allen is my main advisor on this, and he's full of energy and stuff. And he was on a Mayor's Youth Advisory Council in Caldwell. I'm back, I guess, 8-9 years ago or whatever it was. So I'm very excited about that. So we'll have our second gathering next Monday, and we're going to have the kids that are interested in filling. We've got 5 leadership roles: a chair, a vice chair, a historian, secretary, and treasurer. And so we're going to have any one of those 11 or 12 that are interested in that are going to give it up and give us a little bio about themselves and sell us on why they should be able to be in that type of a leadership role. So I'm very excited about that. And it's all about teaching kids civics and some parliamentary procedure things. So I'm very excited to see who knows where this could take us. So it's going to be fun. I told these kids, I said, one of the things I've always liked in life is kind of the unknown. I've always made this statement. It's very, very simple. We don't know what we can't do because we haven't done it yet. And that's what I'm telling these kids. And so it's going to be kind of interesting to see what they've got in mind. But I just wanted to share that with you. October 1st, we had an airport board meeting today, and tomorrow, on the 3rd, we were going to have a regional breakfast at Banyan's. I'm just going to go ahead and tell that, Gary, because the presentations there is going to be on the airport and possibilities of a new terminal, and so that's what that conversation is going to be. So for those of you that can come, I highly recommend it. It's going to be kind of an interesting thing, and we're working on getting that all together, and it's moving forward. Today started the day of the Mayor's Walking Challenge in the state of Idaho, and this has been only subject to those in southern Idaho. And so at the AIC meeting this June, we made a big deal about, hey, there is part of a state above McCall, for crying out loud. Can't we get going? And so here I am into it, and I'm happy.
How long do you get to do it?
Well, it's the entire month. I've got to average 10,000 steps a day.
How'd you do today?
And I tell you what, and this, I got it right here on my phone. I'll just report it right now while we're BSing about this stuff, ladies and
If not, you're
gentlemen.
walking a couple laps.
Today, I started off at 4:30 this morning, got 19,426 steps today.
All right.
Good for 9.16 miles. But anyway, the fun thing about this is, and I said this in June, Jim Bolin can ride a bike all the way across America. By God, I can walk 10,000 steps a day at least, minimum. So there you have it. So I'm out there for it. And it's all about, Blue Shield and Blue Cross, basically, Anthem is what's putting this on. So it's kind of a contest. It's kind of a fun thing. We're going to have a walk back to school. So I'm making trips to schools, and Jen Piffner's getting me all lined up. So I'm going to be trotting around all over town.
We have a fun run on Wednesday.
So anyway, that's kind of a fun thing. I'm really looking forward to that. And I just wanted to emphasize again with Jim when he talked about that October 18th Water Summit. That's always a great event to go to, because we're getting to the place now is like, when are we going to do this? We need an alternative water supply. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Gary, have you got anything for us?
Actually, no, just got back from the International City County Managers Association annual conference, and got all kinds of new ideas to torment staff with.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Mayor.
I should just mention that legislative forum was put on by the Moscow Chamber of Commerce. So, thank you, Jen.
One quick thing one of the things I like about Catherine Burns is that she is blunt and candid, and I love that about Catherine, because her and I have had great conversations. I'm not going to discuss them on the air about some of the talks we've had, but that woman has made a big difference for us in arts and farmers market, and we're all proud of her, David. And thank you so very much for those kind remarks that you made. You're spot on. Simple as that.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, you might comment on the throwdown with Pocatello.
Oh, geez, that's one thing I did forget. I've got a bet going with the mayor of Pocatello, where the Idaho State University is. We've got a bet, and the bet is whichever team wins. If the Vandals win this Saturday, he has got to wear a Vandal tie that I am going to present to him at the Association of Idaho Cities board meeting on Friday, the day before the game. I'm also going to give him a quite large handkerchief with Vandals on it, so that when his team loses and he has to weep, he'll have something to cover and soothe his eyeballs with. Brian, my friend, Mayor Brian Blatt, he's a good guy, and he's got this real ugly orange and black Bengal type of tie. So if the Vandies lose, I'll be wearing a Bengal tie at the next council meeting, so that's what the bet is. So we're having a little fun with this. It's a little thing between us that we started going with Vandals being back into the Big Sky. So that's kind of a kick in the pants. So thanks, Art, for bringing that up. So
I had to.
With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Let's go.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 8:23. Thank you, everybody.